The German obsession with handcrafted perfection blinded them to the superiority of the connected industrial colossus. Kummersdorf revealed the brutally inconvenient truth: the inferior Sherman surpassed the Panther in durability and operation. The invisible coup de grace was SCR 508 FM radio in every Sherman, weaving the combat network and the logistical abundance of a GMC CCKW in Stalingrado, sealing the mathematics of defeat. This undeniable material paradox, revealed at Kummersdorf in 1943, generated disturbing silence. The German obsession with handcrafted perfection clashed head-on with the robustness and mass production of the War Daddy II. Internal reports attempted to distort data, but the mathematics of defeat was already taking shape. Ideological blindness prevented them from understanding that American superiority did not lie solely in the platform, but in a connected colossus. The ideological blindness of the German command was absolute. Incapable of conceiving non-visible superiority, armor, cannons, they attributed the real-time coordination of American units to supernatural training or inexplicable luck. General Guderian in 1944 recorded frustration with the American reaction speed without ever identifying the underlying technological gap. The Wehrmacht, obsessed with the handcrafted perfection of each Panther, failed to see interconnection as the true weapon. The fatal incomprehension that the American industrial colossus produced not only tanks, but also logistical abundance, GMC CCKW in Stalingrado, would seal their fate. Their defeat was inevitable. The Wehrmacht's fatal incomprehension extended to the most insidious element of the American industrial colossus, the SCR 508 FM radio. This silent hero, present in every War Daddy II, wove the combat network. It allowed for real-time coordination and situational awareness that German doctrine, with its limited AM radios, never conceived. It was the invisible coup de grace, transforming each Sherman into a node of a superior tactical organism, undecipherable to German blindness. This head-on collision of worlds was the true mathematics of defeat. For the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, the idea that the industrial colossus could discard millions of gallons of fuel or burn surplus sugar was a logistical heresy, an affront to their doctrine of handcrafted perfection and calculated scarcity. American abundance, symbolized by the GMC CCKW in Stalingrado, was an ideological blindness that prevented the understanding of the superiority of mass production in another dimension. The German doctrine, forged in artisanal perfection and rapid assaults with limited resources, was fatally destined to collide with the American connected industrial colossus. The ideological blindness of the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht prevented them from understanding that interconnectedness and mass production would nullify any individual tactical superiority. General Halder in 1942 underestimated Allied capabilities, without foreseeing that the mathematics of defeat would be imposed by the overwhelming superiority of logistical and communication systems, where each War Daddy II was a node of a tactical organism. The Blitzkrieg doctrine, a pillar of the Wehrmacht's initial superiority, revealed its intrinsic structural cracks. By 1943, it became the mathematics of defeat. Designed for rapid assaults, it demanded tactical coordination and effective use of the Schwerpunkt. Its communication, with few G5 radios of limited range and visual signals, was obsolete and flawed. The absence of a ubiquitous network meant that after the initial breakthrough, German formations disintegrated. In contrast, American superiority lay in interconnectedness, transforming each War Daddy II into a node of a tactical organism. The failure was not one of courage, but of technological and doctrinal infrastructure that could not scale to the magnitude of the connected colossus, an ideological blindness that prevented understanding the enemy's true weapon. German technological blindness was an operational death sentence. By 1943, Wehrmacht reports showed commanders' frustration with the lack of tactical cohesion. The few G5, with its dismal and vulnerable range, isolated units, preventing real-time reactions to maneuvers. In contrast, the American industrial colossus produced the Sherman with an SCR 508 FM radio, Falava com amigos, talked to friends, and delivered logistical abundance challenging Germany. A GMC CCKW in Stalingrad, proving abundance where there was scarcity, demonstrated the superiority of American tactical interconnectedness. The Wehrmacht, obsessed with perfect panzers, ignored that superiority lay in a ubiquitous combat network and real-time coordination, dismantling its doctrine. The mathematics of defeat was relentless. American interconnectedness created vital nodes, German fragmentation, strategic collapse. Germans disdained the Sherman, War Daddy II, effective due to quantity, not design. Kummersdorf revealed the Sherman's robustness and simplicity, superior to the Panther in durability and repair. The invisible blow, the SCR 508 FM radio. It created the world's first combat network with unique real-time coordination. Eastern Front, 1944. Clear German frustration. Hans von Luck saw units as isolated, deaf, and blind elephants, while American tactics operated as a single organism via the ether at the front. Ideological blindness prevented the Wehrmacht from seeing interconnectivity as a pillar of the mathematics of defeat. The irony, Germany struggled for tanks, while a GMC CCKW, a symbol of US production in Stalingrado, demonstrated abundance where there was scarcity. The collision between the doctrine of scarcity and the US industrial colossus was inevitable. The Wehrmacht, obsessed with the perfection of its panzers, ignored the mathematics of disconnection. By mid-1944, Allied reports from Normandia quantified disproportionate losses for German units in areas of high American radio density. The inability to coordinate supporting fire, report exposed flanks, or request reinforcements resulted in tactical annihilation. German colonels witnessed the frustration of seeing inferior Shermans maneuver like a cohesive phalanx. The ubiquitous SCR 508 FM radio wove a network that nullified the individual superiority of the isolated Panther. Each encounter was a collision with reality, a debt paid in blood and steel for ideological blindness. The irony was profound. While Germany dreamed of the perfect Panther, the American industrial colossus delivered a system where communication transformed quantity into qualitative superiority. German ideological blindness was brutally tested in prisoner camps. Wehrmacht soldiers captured in Tunisia and Normandia witnessed a profound logistical shock. Reports describe GMC CCKW vehicles unloading supplies that exceeded what a German division would consume in a month and discarding rations and equipment. A German sergeant in 1943 expressed perplexity. "They throw away more food than we have on our tables for a week. How can we fight an enemy that does not understand scarcity?" This abundance, perceived as waste, was the most visceral and humiliating manifestation of the industrial colossus, proof of an unattainable superiority. The mathematics of defeat became visible in mountains of supplies, not in armor. The GMC CCKW, a symbol of overwhelming mass production, delivered the truth. War was not about artisanal perfection, but about a logistics of excess that dismantled the doctrine of scarcity. At the Oberkommando, the arrogance of craftsmanship perfection persisted, ignoring evidence. German doctrine obsessively focused on the qualitative superiority of its weaponry, unable to assimilate the systemic revolution of the American industrial colossus. Jodl in 1944 disdained the Allied brute quantity, failing to recognize that it was orchestrated by a ubiquitous combat network and fueled by unprecedented logistics of excess. The crisis was not tactical. It was a devastating frontal collision between an obsolete mindset, forged in scarcity and craftsmanship, and the new reality of industrial warfare. Defeat was not merely about tanks or planes. It was the ideological inability to comprehend interconnection and abundance as the true decisive weapons, a coup de grace that sealed the Reich's fate. The German obsession with the craftsmanship perfection of their panzers, in engineering, armor, and precision cannons, blinded them to the true American weapon, not individual bravery, but the overwhelming superiority of an interconnected combat system, each tank a vital node in a vast network. Reports from Kummersdorf detailed the robustness, simplicity, and ease of maintenance of the Sherman War Daddy II, revealing an inconvenient truth. The German failure, however, lay in not deciphering the invisible element that exponentially amplified this platform. The SCR 508 FM radio, this coup de grace, transformed the War Daddy II from a mere armored vehicle into an organic component of an unprecedented combat network, a tactical nervous system that allowed real-time coordination. This invisible revolution, the Wehrmacht, trapped by the doctrine of individual excellence, never fully comprehended. In February 1943, at the Battle of Kasserine Pass, Tunisia, German panzers, exemplars of Germanic engineering, moved with the tactical precision of the Blitzkrieg. However, coordination was a precarious exercise of improvisation and visual signals. The few G5 AM radio imposed technological limitations. It was susceptible to static and battlefield noise. Artillery, machine guns, engines had pitiful range and few frequencies. Communication degraded with each explosion, turning voices into unintelligible static, isolating commanders and cohesive formations into isolated, deaf and blind elephants, as Hans von Luck would lament in 1944. This systemic failure prevented reacting to unexpected threats, concentrating fire or coordinating complex maneuvers in real time. The mathematics of disconnection was relentless. The absence of a ubiquitous network meant that after breaking visual contact or losing a leader, German formations disintegrated in prolonged combat, losing cohesion and the ability to apply their doctrine of shock and movement. In stark contrast, the American industrial colossus had already implemented a solution that seemed like science fiction to German engineers. The SCR 508 FM radio, a frequency-modulated system, was the silent hero that wove the world's first combat network. While the German FUG-5 operated with 10 watts, the SCR 508 delivered 25 watts of power, ensuring superior range and unparalleled signal penetration in complex terrains, dense forests, and under heavy fire. FM modulation eliminated most of the static interference and noise of AM radios, providing crystal-clear voice clarity even in the most chaotic conditions. Furthermore, the ability to operate on multiple crystal-controlled frequencies guaranteed significantly greater security against enemy eavesdropping and tactical flexibility to change channels in real time, avoiding saturation. This system allowed commanders to maintain continuous situational awareness, an invaluable advantage in dynamic combat. The superiority was systemic and doctrinal, not just technical. American doctrine, driven by mass production and the good enough philosophy, ensured that every Sherman, War Daddy II, was equipped with an SCR 508 FM radio. Thus, all tanks in a formation could communicate in real time, creating a collective brain on the battlefield. The Sherman, despised by the Wehrmacht for its inferior armor and cannon, vs. Panther Tiger, transformed via the SCR 508 into a node of a superior tactical organism. Real-time coordination allowed for dynamic and complex maneuvers, flanking maneuvers, ambushes, precise fire concentration, and rapid response to threats, something irreplicable by the Germans. Frustrated German colonels saw inferior Shermans maneuver cohesively, attributing it to supernatural training or luck, never identifying the underlying technological and doctrinal gap. Confidence in communication allowed American commanders to delegate more, with orders received and executed with clarity. The scale of this invisible revolution was incomprehensible to the German mindset, forged in scarcity and artisanal perfection that prioritized individual quality over mass quantity. While Germany struggled to equip its most advanced panzers with effective radios, often only the platoon commander transmitted, with others merely receiving, the American industrial colossus produced tens of thousands of SCR 508s. This mass production ensured their omnipresence not only in tanks but also in reconnaissance vehicles, artillery, and infantry, creating an uninterrupted communication web on the battlefield. This abundance was not limited to radios. It extended to every aspect of the American war machine, from ammunition and fuel to spare parts and transportation. The ability to mass produce and distribute these systems was a testament to the logistics of excess that the Wehrmacht, accustomed to frugality and meticulous management of scarce resources, could not conceive. The irony: Germany, a pioneer in radio technology and the birthplace of innovations like the crystal radio, was irremediably behind, not due to a lack of scientific ingenuity, but a fundamental failure to scale production, standardize components, and integrate technology into a ubiquitous and robust combat network. The ideological blindness of the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht prevented them from assimilating that interconnection, and mass production would nullify any individual tactical superiority. The idea that the industrial colossus could discard millions of gallons of fuel or burn surplus sugar to produce alcohol fuel was a logistical heresy, an affront to their doctrine of artisanal perfection, calculated scarcity, and parsimonious use of resources. American abundance, symbolized by the GMC CCKW, a simple, robust, and easily repairable truck that proved the logistics of excess where scarcity should have been, was the most visceral and humiliating manifestation of Allied industrial power. This truck, capable of transporting 2.5 tons of cargo over any terrain, produced in over 500,000 units, ensured that every War Daddy 2 was connected, supplied, and operational with spare parts. The GMC CCKW was the artery that fed the SCR 508's nervous system and the Sherman's muscles. Defeat became visible not only in mountains of supplies, but in the ability of each Sherman to talk to its friends, coordinate movements and fire, transforming quantity into qualitative superiority, and the war into an inevitable collision between the doctrine of scarcity, individual excellence, and the connected, abundant, and relentless colossus. Operation Cobra, launched in the summer of 1944, exposed the Wehrmacht's ideological blindness. Confident in panzers like the Tiger and Panther and in elite units, German doctrine failed to see the true Allied weapon, an interconnected and resilient combat network. In Normandy, German annihilation came from the American industrial capacity to weave a web of communication, logistics, and command. Each Sherman, War Daddy 2, became a vital node in this network. The SCR 508 FM radio, invisible to enemy interception, transformed the battlefield into a real-time nervous system, orchestrating the German defeat with precision and speed. In July 1944, in Normandy, the entrenched Wehrmacht relied on its Panther and Tiger. Their doctrine focused on the excellence of shock units and static defense, prioritizing individual quality over quantity. However, their Achilles' heel was the chronic deficiency in communication. The German FUG-5 AM radio had limited range, was susceptible to interference and easily interceptable. This isolated formations, making coordination dangerous and reliant on messengers. German reports lamented the fragmentation of command. Without reliable communication, the blitzkrieg based on speed and coordination became obsolete against a connected enemy. Launched on July 25th, Operation Cobra demonstrated American systemic superiority. Preceded by a 4,000-ton bomb carpet, American divisions advanced. Each Sherman, with its SCR 508 FM, maintained constant contact, enabling supernatural coordination. The FM eliminated noise and interference, ensuring crystal-clear communication among tanks, infantry, artillery, and command. This allowed them to exploit gaps, coordinate fire, and call for air support with surgical precision. The Sherman, once scorned, became a vital and interconnected component, a node in history's first battlefield network, disorganizing German defenses. In the face of this coordinated avalanche, the Wehrmacht reacted with desperation and incomprehension. Officers like Oberst Hans von Luck observed American fluidity with perplexity. He noted, "They seem to know where we were," attributing the advantage to superior intelligence or elite training. The truth was, the superior intelligence was the SCR 508 FM, providing real-time situational awareness. And the elite training was the networked combat doctrine, with synergy between units. The tactical annihilation was brutal. German divisions were encircled and destroyed, unable to react. Supply lines were cut, counter-offensives crushed, and morale plummeted. The 7th Exército Alemán was dismantled, with thousands of prisoners and hundreds of vehicles lost, paving the way for the Bolson de Falaise and sealing Germany's fate in Normandy. This systemic annihilation would not have been possible without the American industrial colossus and its logistics of abundance. The speed of Operation Cobra demanded an uninterrupted flow of supplies on a scale inconceivable to the Wehrmacht. The GMC CCKW, the Deuce-and-a-half, was the logistical hero feeding the system. More than 500,000 units were produced, ensuring continuous supply. Endless convoys of trucks ensured the momentum of the offensive. While panzers stopped due to lack of fuel or parts, the War Daddy II advanced, connected and supplied by inexhaustible logistics. It was proof that modern war was as much a battle of factories and roads as it was of tanks and soldiers. Operation Cobra was a strategic defeat for the Wehrmacht, exposing doctrinal and resource failures. The kill ratio was overwhelmingly favorable to the Americans. The replacement of losses was unlimited for the Allies. For the Germans, each loss was irrecoverable. American speed was insurmountable by German artisanal perfection, which prioritized individual quality over resilience and mass replacement. Maracle model admitted the material superiority and coordination of the enemy. The irony: Germany, the inventor of the Blitzkrieg, was destroyed by an enhanced and massified version of it, driven by American communication and industry. The collision between German doctrine, scarcity, individual excellence, static defense, and the American colossus, connected abundant offensive, culminated in annihilation in Normandy. The lesson was clear. Connection beats the individual platform, and the factory, with its capacity for mass production and decisive logistics, wins the battlefield, forever redefining the parameters of modern warfare. Despite the annihilation in Normandy and the subsequent despair in the Ardennes, the Wehrmacht, obstinate in its doctrine of individual excellence and in the belief of the Blitzkrieg, persisted in not understanding the true American weapon, the superiority of an interconnected combat network and a logistics of unprecedented abundance. The diaries of German officers in the Ardennes, Dec 1944, would confirm the operational collapse in Stavelot and the Bulge, a direct consequence of ideological blindness in the face of Allied strength. The SCR 508 FM radio and the logistical omnipresence of the industrial colossus, symbolized by the GMC CCKW truck, represented the coup de grace that the artisanal perfection mentality would never absorb. In December 1944, in the Ardennes, the German surprise offensive, the Wacht am Rhein, sought to repeat the success of the 1940 Blitzkrieg, cutting Allied lines and capturing Antwerpia. However, the doctrine of shock and movement depended on fluid communication, something the German Fu-G5 AM radio did not offer. Reports from the 1A SS Panzer Division in Stavelot describe communication chaos. Obersturmbannführer Joachim Peiper, leader of Kampfgruppe Peiper, lamented in his diary the inability to coordinate the advance of columns due to incessant static and the paltry range of his radios. Explosions turned frequencies into unintelligible noise, isolating units. Without a cohesive network, the speed of the offensive turned into vulnerability, exposing flanks and creating deadly traps. On the American side, the SCR 508 FM radio, in every Sherman and command vehicle, wove a resilient and clear communication network. In Stavelot, when Piper's units attempted to outflank American defenses, real-time coordination via FM allowed small infantry and tank units to regroup, call for artillery support and direct airstrikes with a precision that seemed supernatural to the Germans. General Hasso von Manteuffel was frustrated. The enemy always seemed to know where we were, attributing it to superior intelligence. This intelligence was the combat network, transforming each tank into a sensor and actuator, adapting to every German movement with speed and cohesion unattainable for the fragmented Wehrmacht. Communication failure was a symptom of a deeper logistical failure. The German blitzkrieg in the Ardennes relied on capturing Allied fuel depots, revealing chronic scarcity. Diaries of panzer drivers in December 1944 show Tiger and Panther panzers stalled due to lack of fuel, abandoned or captured. The craftsmanship perfection of these vehicles was useless without logistics. While Germany struggled to maintain a few tanks, the American industrial colossus, with its philosophy of excess, ensured Shermans were fueled with parts and continuous fuel via GMC CCKW convoys. These mass-produced deuce and a half were the manifestation of abundance that the Wehrmacht would never match. The ideological blindness of the Oberkommando prevented the assimilation of American logistical and communication superiority. They saw war as tactical duels, where individual German quality should prevail. However, the Ardennes proved that modern warfare was a collision between craftsmanship perfection and production mathematics. The American ability to equip units with FM radios, maintain supplies, and integrate everything into a cohesive network nullified individual German tactical superiority. The despair of Piper and Manteuffel was the recognition that they were fighting an enemy in a dimension of connectivity and abundance that defied their military understanding. Germany, obsessed with building a few perfect tigers, was devoured by a swarm of connected war daddies, fueled by a relentless industrial colossus. The German obsession with the craftsmanship perfection of complex panzers, difficult to manufacture and maintain, contrasted with the American philosophy of mass production of robust equipment, simple to operate and repair. This dichotomy was evident in the GMC CCKW, the iconic deuce and a half, the Allied logistical backbone, while the Wehrmacht relied on captured vehicles and 7 million horses for transport in 1944, a technological regression that challenged the blitzkrieg. The American industrial colossus produced the GMC CCKW on an incomprehensible scale. More than 500,000 units were manufactured, each transporting 2.5 tons across any terrain, from Normandy to the muddy roads of the Ardennes. Logistical abundance was heresy to the German mindset, forged in scarcity and the parsimonious management of resources. For the Wehrmacht, every drop of fuel and spare part was a precious item, meticulously accounted for. The idea that the enemy operated with a colossal excess, discarding millions of gallons of fuel or burning sugar for alcohol, documented in German reports on Allied operations in France, was an affront to their doctrine of war. It was the manifestation of an industrial power that defied German reality, where fuel shortages often paralyzed panzer divisions, turning Tigris and Panthers into inert monuments to useless perfection. The GMC CCKW was not just a truck. It was the tangible symbol of American production mathematics, the silent hero that ensured the omnipresence of the SCR 508 FM radio and the operational readiness of the Sherman War Daddy II. It was the artery that fed the tactical nervous system, delivering ammunition, fuel, spare parts, and vital supplies to every node of the combat network. In December 1944, in the Ardennes, while Piper's units suffered logistical paralysis, the GMC CCKW kept Allied supply lines fluid, ensuring a swift and forceful American response. The psychological shock of this abundance was profound for German prisoners of war. POW testimonies reveal perplexity at the vast quantity of American supplies, the quality of K-rations, the availability of cigarettes, and even Coca-Cola. For soldiers who lived on minimal rations and faced the threat of hunger and scarcity, American opulence seemed to come from another planet. General Alfred Jodl, in post-war interrogations, would admit that the industrial and logistical capacity of the United States was a factor we catastrophically underestimated, recognizing that the war became a head-on collision between two irreconcilable production philosophies. The irony was clear. Germany, which revolutionized warfare with the blitzkrieg, speed and coordination, was paralyzed by its logistical incapacity. Its transport system, dependent on vulnerable railways and animal traction, could not keep pace with modern warfare. In contrast, the GMC CCKW, a simple and reliable vehicle, transformed logistics into a strategic weapon, allowing the American industrial colossus to project its power on an unprecedented scale. The image of the GMC CCKW, robust and inexhaustible, symbolically parked in the heart of Stalingrado, delivering supplies where the Wehrmacht found only the emptiness of scarcity and the cold of defeat, encapsulated the brutal truth: the mathematics of abundance overcame artisanal perfection. The factory, with its capacity for mass production and relentless logistics, won the battlefield. The true extent of German ideological blindness revealed itself in prisoner-of-war camps, where American abundance was an avalanche of consumer goods that dismantled the Reich's war mentality. The confrontation with the Coca-Cola wall was a blow as forceful as any bombardment. Prisoner accounts are unanimous. The sight of piles of Coca-Cola cases, cigarettes and chocolate in quantities that defied war logic caused cultural and ideological shock. A sergeant from the 116th Panzer Division testified, "They had more soda than we had drinking water. How could we fight a country that could afford to waste so much?" This brutally inconvenient truth eroded morale. For the US, Coca-Cola was not a luxury, but a strategic component of troop morale, an extension of the mathematics of production. In 1943, Eisenhower decreed that every American soldier should have access to Coca-Cola for 5 cents. To achieve this, 10 bottling plants were dispatched overseas, distributed by GMC CCKW. This ability to project an abundance of consumer goods, even in combat, was the most tangible proof of industrial and logistical superiority. This ideological blindness prevented the Germans from seeing Coca-Cola as a symbol of productive capacity. While German doctrine focused on the artisanal perfection of a tiger, the US produced thousands of Shermans, radios, and millions of Coca-Cola bottles, each a blow against enemy morale. The Coca-Cola wall was the sweetest and bitterest manifestation of the mathematics of defeat for the Wehrmacht. The immediate consequence of this revelation was the collapse of the German total war narrative. Officers' diaries reflected disillusionment. "They surpass us in everything. How can we win when they have everything and we have nothing?" This perception of total imbalance undermined the will to fight. The Coca-Cola wall was strategic in psychological warfare, a testament to overwhelming superiority. Every sip of soda, every American cigarette eroded the German mindset. The image of the robust and inexhaustible GMC CCKW delivering Coca-Cola to prisoner camps encapsulated the brutal truth: the mathematics of abundance defeated artisanal perfection. The factory, with mass production and tireless logistics, won the battlefield, not just with tanks, but with the simple reality of a soft drink. In post-war interrogations, General Alfred Jodl, a proponent of artisanal perfection, confronted the truth. The material and logistical superiority of the Allies, orchestrated by the SCR 508 FM network, was decisive. For him, the war became a collision between the doctrine of scarcity and the industrial colossus, sealing the mathematics of defeat. The initial arrogance of the Wehrmacht gave way to resignation in the face of an enemy of abundance and interconnectedness. This ideological blindness clashed with the reality of production. Between 1942–1945, the American industrial colossus churned out 49,000 Sherman tanks, 250,000 SCR 508 FM radios, and 800,000 GMC CCKW trucks. For the Wehrmacht, which struggled with scarcity, this scale was incomprehensible. The 4:1 ratio in industrial capacity wasn't just about quantity. It was the mathematics of defeat in action, transforming each Allied unit into a node of an unshakable combat network. The annihilation at Stavelot and in Normandia forced a brutal reassessment. OTAN saw that artisanal perfection succumbed to the industrial colossus. The lesson was clear: connection triumphs over platform. Logistical abundance, symbolized by a GMC CCKW truck in Stalingrado, where scarcity was the norm, redefined strategy. Real-time coordination, driven by the SCR 508 FM, became the pillar of new warfare, weaving the network of defeat and modern tactical communication. The Wehrmacht, indoctrinated in scarcity, never anticipated the collision with American logistical abundance. In prisoner camps, daily confrontation with K-rations, cigarettes, and Coca-Cola, delivered by GMC CCKW, dismantled the German belief in total war. This material superiority, incomprehensible to the Reich, corroded morale and the ideology of scarcity, revealing the mathematics of defeat. World War II was a collision of systems. The Wehrmacht, consumed by artisanal perfection, succumbed to the overwhelming mathematics of abundance. Logistics, symbolized by the GMC CCKW, was the true strategy. Interconnectedness, driven by the industrial colossus, transformed the factory into the decisive battlefield, sealing German ideological blindness.